When you fill up your car or you pay your heating bill, you see a price. But what if I told you that price is, well, it's basically a lie? That there's this massive hidden cost that isn't on any receipt, a cost that all of us are paying in ways we might not even realize. So let's dive in and solve the mystery of the missing price tag. So the big question we're asking is this: what is the real all-in cost of the carbon we're pumping into our atmosphere? This isn't just about the price at the pump. We're talking about a number that affects our health, our homes, our entire future. And to find it, economists have developed a pretty specific tool. And here it is. They call it the social cost of carbon, or SCC for short. Honestly, you can just think of it as the official price tag for pollution. It's meant to calculate the damage, in actual dollars, done by every single extra ton of CO2 we release. And look, this isn't some weird, abstract number. The SCC measures real-world tangible damage. We're talking about the actual hospital bills from things like heat stroke, the cost to rebuild homes after a superstorm, the economic hit farmers take when they can't grow as much food. This is the bill that society ends up paying. Okay, so if economists can actually calculate this cost, why isn't it on the price tag? Why are we paying this bill through disasters and health crises instead of at the source? Well, the answer, it turns out, is not an accident. It's the result of a deliberate, decades-long campaign. And get this, the paper trail is crystal clear. We're talking as far back as the 1950s and 60s. The fossil fuel industry's own scientists were warning their executives about the dangers of climate change. They knew. They knew their product would have planetary consequences. But instead of warning us, they chose to hide the price tag. And their strategy, wow, it was sophisticated. First, they manufactured doubt, spending millions to make the science seem unsettled. Then they shifted responsibility. They actually invented the concept of the personal carbon footprint to make us feel guilty, distracting from the fact that just 100 companies are linked to over 70% of industrial emissions. And of course, they mastered greenwashing, talking a big game about clean energy while lobbying like crazy for more oil and gas. It was a masterclass in delay. And this wasn't just some PR campaign. It was backed by absolutely staggering amounts of money. We're talking tens of millions of dollars, year after year, spent lobbying politicians to make sure that the true cost of carbon would never be officially recognized or, more importantly, regulated. To put that financial firepower into perspective, just look at this ratio. For every $1 that environmental and climate groups spend on advocacy, the fossil fuel industry often spends 27 to 1. It's just an overwhelming force designed to keep that price tag hidden and make sure the public keeps footing the real bill. But here's the thing. While this whole campaign of doubt was raging, scientists kept working. They were refining their models, updating their data, and pushing to uncover the very number that had been so deliberately suppressed. Which brings us right back to our central mystery. After all these decades of confusion and political pressure, what is the actual scientifically backed social cost of carbon? All right, for years, the official number used by the US government was right around here, $51 per ton. This was the number used to shape policy, and as we've seen, it was a number heavily influenced by political and economic pressure that wanted to keep it as low as humanly possible. But then came the update. A landmark 2022 study in the journal Nature, using the latest science, came back with a new number: $185 per ton. That is more than 3.5 times the old estimate. The hidden part of that price tag was way, way bigger than anyone was telling us. So why the huge jump? Well, 2 big reasons. First, the science is just flat out better. We have a much clearer picture of the risks now. But the second reason is really a moral choice. The new models use what's called a lower discount rate. In simple terms, that means we're no longer devaluing the future. We're finally saying that the well-being of our kids and grandkids is just as important as our own comfort today. But hold on, the story doesn't end there. That $185 figure, it's just a snapshot in time. The most alarming part of this whole mystery is that the true cost of carbon isn't static. It's actually accelerating. See, for all of human history, the planet has basically helped clean up our mess. But those natural defenses, our oceans, our forests, they're getting overwhelmed. They're weakening. And that means the next ton of CO2 we emit will actually cause more damage than the last one because less of it gets absorbed. It's a dangerous cost multiplier effect. Just look at this. Over half of all the CO2 we've ever produced has been soaked up by these natural systems. They've saved us from the worst effects so far. But as we push them to their absolute limit, that percentage starts to shrink, and the carbon we emit has a much more powerful and much more costly impact. This graph really shows the stark choice we face. That red line, that's the future where we just keep ignoring the true social cost of carbon, a path of rapidly accelerating damage. The blue line is the path where we actually act on this knowledge, where we make polluters pay the true price. Two totally different futures, and the choice is being made right now. And that brings us to the final and, frankly, the most terrifying part of this investigation. What happens if that cost accelerator goes into complete overdrive? What's the price tag for pushing the planet's systems past a point of no return? Scientists warned about this catastrophic possibility they call an ocean source flip. This is where the ocean, which has absorbed so much of our carbon, gets so warm and stressed that it starts releasing that carbon back into the atmosphere on a massive scale. And the consequences? They're almost unimaginable. The first domino to fall would be our food supply. Ocean acidification and warming, which has collapsed global fisheries. On land, runaway heat and drought would turn huge farming regions into deserts. The next domino? Society itself. We're talking about unprecedented sea level rise and weather disasters that would displace hundreds of millions of people, creating resource wars and just overwhelming any attempt at order. And the final domino? The global economy. Supply chains, financial markets, basic infrastructure, all the systems that modern life depends on would be destroyed. This isn't a recession. It's a civilization-level collapse. So what's the social cost of carbon if you factor in that risk? Well, the estimates just skyrocket to over $1,000 per ton. And even that number starts to feel meaningless. I mean, how do you put a price on everything? At that point, the cost is effectively infinite. So we are right back where we started. We've found the missing price tag, we've seen the decades of deliberate deception that kept it hidden, and we now understand the catastrophic final bill if we keep ignoring it. So the only real question left is this: knowing the true cost, who should be the one to pay the bill?